Okay, so I've had all of maybe 2 minutes to look at this tree, and I'm pretty sure that in Europe you guys are continually trying to up the level of how difficult the demonstration can be. So that's good. I like the challenge. It's good for everybody. But when I first approach a tree like this that I haven't had a lot of time to see, and I'm on stage, immediately I've got to start thinking about what does the tree have to offer us as bonsai artists, right? And immediately looking at this tree, it's very obvious it has this immensely powerful trunk. It has, and you guys might not be able to see it down there, but from here there's a beautiful nebari already formed, which is quite rare for collected material. And on top of that, it's got quite a bit of foliage mass to be working with, so I think we can get this tree to a very high level of shape and definition in one go. But since we've got this very powerful trunk, one thing that we can notice is most of the foliage is on this upper portion here, right? And this is going to take some fairly significant manipulation in order to be able to get this down and bring the foliage mass down around this powerful trunk. And so my goal is to figure out how I do that successfully and safely while also making it quite beautiful. And to begin with, I'm just going to start by doing some cleaning and a little bit of deadwood work on some of these cut sections. All the while, I'm going to be thinking, how do I do this so that it looks good and works well? Down as far as we can here, and then we're going to bring this back on the tree as much as we can there, okay? Now so typically this technique that I've applied here is mainly applied to junipers, right? Like the Sabina, or for us in the United States, the Rocky Mountain, where you would remove one whole side of tissue. So on any branch, you've got two forces, right? You've got, if you're bending it this way, you've got tension and you've got compression. Okay, so we want to remove one of those two forces to make it easier to bend, and also so that when we bend, the compression isn't adding to the force that's being applied to the tension side of the branch, right? So we actually remove kind of that middle hip that causes that to break. But with pines, as opposed to junipers, the way that they move resources through their branches is they can move vertically as well as horizontally, okay? So this is why we typically don't use this technique. However, with mugo pines, you see mugo pines become very vein specific where they only move resources vertically. So to apply this technique and insinuate that we're only going to move resources vertically, because it's a mugo pine, it's an acceptable technique to utilize. So, what we're going to do now is we'll apply raffia to make sure that we compress this tension side as we bend. That'll give us a higher chance of success. So we'll lower this here structurally as far as we can, and then we'll fold this back as far as we can and see if we can't get this foliage somewhere down around in here to build a tree from. since this very major bend went quite smoothly and quite well, I felt very confident that we could remove this. So I cut this branch that we were talking about off. But that's only the very beginning. That's only the idea, right? So once you have that idea, then you have to construct a tree around that idea. And the most major part of that tree is giving it movement or flow. Finding that branch that creates that distance from the trunk, that gives you that direction. And that is this branch right here, moving to the left. We establish that movement, then we've also got to maintain balance so the tree doesn't feel like it's going to fall over. So we start to look at our branches on the opposite side that counter that. They don't offset the movement. We don't want even. We want direction. But we still have to have that counterbalance. And that's what we're working on positioning right now, is that counterbalance. So then from there, what we'll have to do is we'll have to figure out what the apex is going to look like. And we have a few options. We could completely eliminate this highest point, and we could actually make the apex from here, compact the tree a little bit more, but have a little bit less to work with. I don't think that's going to be the most effective, but we'll make that decision once we get there, because that's going to be the final place that we actually style. But up until that point, right, we'll set the structure on the rest of the tree except for the apex, and then we'll come back to this portion and we'll start defining our secondary and tertiary branches to set the style of how we want this foliage mass to accentuate all of the different details and areas of interest in the tree. A lot of times we wire the tree, all the tree, and then we style all the branches, right? But the way that I was taught and the way that I've learned to work with trees is you make all of those big, risky moves in the beginning, right? And Mr. Kamar used to say that's 90% of the work, is those big moves that set the structure for the future of the tree, which was this big bend, right, pulling it back, setting these positions here. Once you have all of those big moves out of the way, you build on that foundation. You start to structure that tree on those big moves. So the tree is going to look quite ugly for probably 7/10 or, 3 of the 4 hours that I'm going to be up here working on it, but it's that 4th hour when all of a sudden it starts, oh, I see where that goes, oh, I see what you're, oh, that looks quite nice. Hopefully. So I think there's a kind of a line in the sand right now for bonsai, and that is to say, on this side, we create trees that look like trees in nature, and on this side, I think it is to say we create trees that look like Japanese bonsai sort of icons or representations of Japanese bonsai, right? And I think that line in the sand doesn't need to be so clear, right? I think that trees that offer the potential to create a really natural expression of that species in the wild, we have to take advantage of those opportunities. But then some trees lend themselves to a more iconic bonsai form, right? And when you have that opportunity, it may not be as clear of a representation of the species in nature, but it is still a valid approach to the art form to create a beautiful bonsai, right? And so when we're dealing with a pine tree, that's particularly a blurred line, because pines often do have a very bonsai-esque shape in the natural environment, and sometimes the material or the tree in the natural environment looks nothing like a bonsai and doesn't offer that potential, and then we've got to take advantage of that.
This tree was really, really difficult because we took that big branch and we bent it down like this. So everything that was up like this was then facing down like this. So we had to take each one of those pieces and kind of turn it over while still respecting the fact that the branch, we can't just, right? So when you do that kind of work, it takes a tree maybe a year or two from having its branch kind of here to naturalize and really grow into that shape and kind of relax so that it doesn't look so stressed. I'm really happy with the result, and towards the end when I was back here looking at it from a distance, my focus was on the length and the way that the lengths throughout the entire tree played with each other. So the motivation was for our flow to move this way, our apex to move this way with it. And for kind of a large portion of the styling, this was still really, really long. And so in order to push that in that direction, we had to pull this in and push that out, right? And that's kind of what catalyzed the whole design. It happened.